All right, it's the middle of the week. We're here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com to get your day started with the Morning Pitt. You get your morning shower, get your morning shave, and get your Morning Pitt right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You don't want to miss it any day of the week that we put these out, Monday through Friday, so make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And while you're here, like the video as well. We like to see both of those numbers, the likes and the subscription numbers, go up. It doesn't cost you anything to like the video. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe to the YouTube channel, so do me a solid. All you have to do is click the button, and that's pretty much it. No obligation. You just do something nice for me. I'll keep putting out these videos. You do me a solid with that. Of course, the website, I'm Chris Beek, of course, from Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. Find it all at Panther-Lair.com and message boards where you can talk to hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans all day, every day. The message boards have been buzzing this week with the news of Papa Conte committing to Pitt, adding another four-star prospect to the 2023 recruiting class for Jeff Capel, in addition to putting a big man on the roster who can probably provide depth and rebounding and defense. Not a bad thing to have to go along with Federico and Guillermo Diaz-Graham. We talked a lot about that on yesterday's Morning Pitt, and the message boards are still buzzing about it. And then on the football side, yesterday we had a pretty big update on quarterbacks, who Pitt is really targeting at the quarterback position, the top 4 quarterback prospects on the board. You want to check that out to know where Pat Narduzzi and his staff stand with really the most important position on the field, right? Quarterback. Where do they stand in the 2024 recruiting class with their top quarterback prospects? We've got all the info there at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. So go check that out right now, or after you're done watching this video, right? A lot of basketball talk the last couple days. Thought we would switch back to football. Talk a little football numbers, not jersey numbers, not statistics, but scholarship numbers. Got an updated scholarship board they're going to be rolling out today on Panther-Lair.com. We'll have it on the message boards there with analysis and discussion. And I thought we could talk about it here on the Morning Pitt as well, where Pitt stands with scholarships heading into the 2023 season as of right now, as of May 24th. What is the scholarship situation? Sorry, I had to move something under the desk. What is the scholarship situation for Pitt heading into the season, and kind of where they stand at this point? Of course, along the way, you might have noticed I've got my Snapper 49 shirt on. You know, our guy Byron Floyd, Pitt's long snapper, who is doing some work to try and support Children's Hospital, raise money for Children's Hospital at Snapper49.com. You can go there and just make a donation. You can go and buy sweet Snapper 49 gear like this shirt, which is super comfortable. I don't know why I need to wear it more often than I do, because it's one of the most comfortable shirts I own. You can buy that, and he's got seasoning blends, which are awesome. I've had the all-purpose seasoning and the steak seasoning blend. They're both really, really good. I put them on everything, and it's all for a good cause. So go to Snapper49.com and check out what Byron Floyd is trying to do to help raise money for Children's Hospital. You can't really hate that. And you can get something out of it too. You can get a sweet shirt, you can get some sweet gear, you can get some sweet spice blends. And this is a good way to sort of segue into or dovetail with our discussion of scholarships, because our guy Byron Floyd is on scholarship. Pitt's long snapper. He is... Let me bring up the scholarship board here so we can look at it. He's a redshirt junior this year. He was the starting long snapper last year, took over for Cal Adamitis, and did an admirable job. Really didn't have any issues, recovered a fumble, maybe 2. I forget. Forget the details on it, but he's on scholarship, as you would expect with your primary specialist. I think if you're... in any given year, you've got your kicker, you've got your punter, and probably your long snapper are going to be on scholarship. I think in most years, you might have a year where you go through and, Sam Scarton was the starting kicker and was not on scholarship in 2021, right? The ACC championship year, he was not on scholarship because Ben Sauls was. You don't really want to have more than one kicker on scholarship. But Sauls came in on scholarship, ultimately won the job heading into last season, and had a really good year. A little bit of a rocky start, but finished about as strong as you could. I think he made 15 out of his final 16 or something along like that. And the only one he missed over the final 3 quarters of the season was the kick of Virginia that had more than enough length, more than enough distance at like 50 plus yards. It just went off the upright, and it was no good as a result. But of course, he made 5 field goals in the Sun Bowl, was arguably the MVP of that game, or at least one of the MVPs of that game. So he's been on scholarship. Now they got Byron Floyd on scholarship. With Sam Vanderhaar leaving, they don't have a scholarship punter, but I think the reality was they were going to have a new starting punter this year anyway. Either Jeff York, the transfer from Elon, or Caleb Junko, who's been around and punted a decent amount in the second half of the season last year for Pitt. They're both walk-ons at this point, but you would think whoever wins that job will end up on scholarship as well. So you have your 3 primary specialist starters, or 3 primary special team starters, I should probably say, is a better way of saying it. You would have your 3 primary special team starters on scholarship at that point, with the field goal kicker, I should say the place kicker, the long snapper, and the punter. Right now, only 2 of them are on scholarship. It's relevant, on one hand, Byron Floyd is a bit of news. I don't think that was really out there yet. But it's relevant to mention that the punter will probably get a scholarship, you would assume. It's relevant to mention that because it affects the number of remaining scholarships available. And before we get into positions and where the holes are and where they need to fill in better with the scholarship situation, or position-wise, it's important to note the total number. As it stands right now, with all freshmen expected to be here, all the transfers that they've brought in, all the transfers that they've lost, everything's sort of, plus minus, it's all added up. They currently stand at a projected 82 scholarships for the 2023 season. That's where we have them. And I ran it by our guy, Jim Hammett. He'll be on the Panther-Lair show again tonight. Looking forward to that conversation at 8:30 tonight on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And he came up with the same number. So I always like to have someone fact check or double check my scholarship board, because inevitably I miss something, and I did. I actually had them at 81 because I forgot to add the latest transfer, Jackson Brown, the offensive lineman. Jim pointed it out to me, and now we're all set at 82 scholarships. That means there's 3 available left to go. And you would think one of those goes to a punter, which really, so you're looking at 2 available scholarships. And those scholarships could go a number of places. We can talk about some positions that they might need. I could see them taking 1 transfer and putting 1 walk-on on scholarship, one additional walk-on, maybe a Jake McConaughey or somebody like that. They've got, I think, Nick Lappy. They've got a few walk-ons who seem like if they're not going to have a primary role on offense and defense, they're not too far away from having a primary role on offense or defense. And they also will probably be contributors on special teams. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see one of the 2 remaining scholarships, after they give 1 to a punter, one of the other 2 remaining scholarships going to a current walk-on and getting him up on scholarship, with 1 more, that other scholarship probably going to another transfer. And, a lot of the options are off the board. A lot of the targets that Pitt has been after, they've missed out on. Certainly almost all their wide receivers. After they got Dejon Reynolds, pretty much all their receivers have gone elsewhere. I think they're going to keep looking at wide receiver and see what they can find out there. And certainly anytime you have a chance, if you can get a good offensive lineman or something like that, you're going to do that as well. But they've got that 1, presumably 1 or maybe even 2 scholarships to play with for the transfers. And then that'll pretty much be it. Now, again, we're assuming all the freshmen make it in and everybody's all set to go there. We'll get a more clear picture of that, I think, over the next few weeks as we try to, confirm with all these guys and see if there's going to be any late surprises or departures like Jordan Bailey, the running back last year. But that's where it stands right now. 82, with 1 of the remaining 3 going to a punter and the other 2 going to either current walk-ons or a transfer and a walk-on, or 2 transfers, however it might play out. As you scroll down through position by position then, looking at just what they have on scholarship, you start at the top with quarterbacks, and you're looking at 4 scholarship quarterbacks. Paul Chryst, I think, at one point said he likes to have 5 scholarship quarterbacks on the roster at all times, just as kind of a baseline. Some years you're going to end up a little bit below that, but he'd like to shoot for having 5 at all times. I don't think that's... I shouldn't say I don't think it's viable. I just don't know how viable that is in the current climate. I just don't know if you're going to be able to keep them all down on the farm once they've seen the transfer portal. I think it's tough to do that. I think most years you're going to have 4 or maybe even 3 scholarship quarterbacks on the roster. And quite frankly, I mean, when you look at who they've got on the roster this year with Phil Dracovic and Christian Veer as transfers, Ty Diefenbach coming in as the freshman, and then Nate Yarnell really is the one returning guy as a redshirt sophomore, I'm a little surprised that they have all four. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it would have surprised anyone this offseason if Nate Yarnell looked at it and said, all right, you brought in Dracovic to be the starter this year. We brought in Veer to presumably compete for and or win the job after Dracovic is done. How exactly am I fitting into this equation again and going to find a new home? I don't think that would have surprised anyone, and they'd be sitting with 3 scholarship quarterbacks. Now, as it stands, they're ready to go into the year with 4. I guess they could get a Derek Kyler type, an Ivy League transfer or something who can come in and be the reserve and basically just take up a scholarship spot, but it would give you 5 scholarship quarterbacks for the year. I don't see that happening. I think they'll go into it with these 4 and just kind of ride with that group and then see where they stand after the season when they see who decides to stick around, who decides to go, and coaches can figure out if they need to bring someone else in. Beyond Dracovic with Veer and Yarnell, you're looking at 2 guys who have some eligibility left. They're both redshirt sophomores this year. In 2023, I should know this off the top of my head. So redshirt freshman in 2022, freshman in 2021. So they don't have the COVID year available. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't forgetting. They weren't on a roster in 2020. So they've got this year plus 2 more on the other side. So those guys are here through the 2025 season, or at least they have eligibility through the 2025 season. So you've got the next few years kind of covered with upperclassmen scholarship quarterbacks. You're going to want to continue recruiting those high school guys, though, to fill in that depth behind him. Ideally, you'll be able to keep Veer and Yarnell on the roster after this season. Veer really doesn't have an option to go since he already transferred, unless he were to graduate and go as a grad transfer. Yarnell will have that option available to him if he doesn't feel like he has the starting job or isn't going to get a shot at the starting job. He could presumably go. And then you're looking at Ty Diefenbach being your backup, or maybe they get another transfer. But as it stands this year, 4 scholarship quarterbacks, not a bad number to have. You've got a super senior, 6th-year senior as the starter, and a couple of redshirt sophomores with some game experience as the backups. Not a bad spot. At running back, I list 6 scholarship running backs. That includes Daniel Carter, who wants to consider himself, I think he wants to consider himself a tailback and not a fullback. We'll put him in that group just to make it easy. You're really kind of front-loaded with upperclassmen in the running backs. You've got 2 seniors, Daniel Carter and Sibo Flemister. Carter with an extra year to play if he wants it. Because this is his 5th year, and he was on the roster in 2020. So he could have a season in 2024 if he wants it. Sibo Flemister's done after this year. Then you have 2 juniors in Derek Davis and Rodney Hammond. And then you got some space, a couple empty classes until you go back to TJ Harbison and Montrevious Lloyd. I think you're always going to have a little bit of space. I think it's not as common to have redshirting running backs unless you've got a tremendous amount of depth and you really don't need to use a freshman. You might end up getting a red shirt out of him, but more often than not, you're going to see those running backs go through without using up eligibility. I think they did a good job taking 2 running backs this year, particularly after missing on Jordan Bailey last year. But then there was another miss in that class with Rodney Hammond when he was coming in with Malik Newton, and Newton was medically disqualified. They've got some gaps in there. I think they're probably going to have to look for a transfer this coming offseason to sort of fill that in, and or try to take 2 running backs in the 2024 recruiting class. They already have 1 commitment. I could see them trying to get another one. At wide receiver, I think you've really seen... we list 10 scholarship players at wide receiver, and 6 of them are freshmen or redshirt freshmen. What you've seen, I'll add one more note. All right. This wide receiver situation, I've talked about this a bunch of times, but look at this, all right? 10 scholarship wide receivers, okay? 6 of them are freshmen or redshirt freshmen, and of the 4 upperclassmen, 3 were transfers, and the other one signed with Pitt as a defensive back. Just moved to wide receiver full-time this offseason. That's the situation at wide receiver. Bub Means is a redshirt senior. Kanate Mumfield's a junior. Dejon Reynolds is a redshirt sophomore. They are all transfers. Javante Royal came to Pitt as a defensive back. He's a redshirt junior. He was messing around at wide receiver last season during the fall. He's made that move full-time this offseason. And then you have 6 freshmen and redshirt freshmen. Addison Copeland and Che Wabuko as redshirt freshmen. And then the 4 incoming guys, Zion Fowler and Kenny Johnson and Izzy Polk and Lamar Seymour. It's a young group. It's backloaded with underclassmen and freshmen. And they took a big class in 2023. And quite frankly, I think they're going to need another big class in 2024 just to rebuild that room. We've talked about this a bunch of times, but the early departure of Jordan Addison, the early departure of Jalen Barton, the early departure of Jaden Bradley, Jared Wayne choosing not to come back for one more year. They've had some, in addition to guys like, Will Gibson and then Shockey Jacques Louis transferring, Cameron O'Neal didn't pan out. I mean, you've got some pretty big gaps in there. And some of the highs were high. I mean, some of the guys they got were really good. Jordan Addison, obviously, was a great player. Jared Wayne had a great finish to his career at Pitt. But there are some huge holes in the quarterback or in the wide receiver recruiting that they've needed to fill in with transfers and probably will continue to have to fill in. Tight end is I mean, I don't know what you say about tight end. It's a black hole, ultimately, is what it comes down to. It really is. I mean, they've got 5 scholarship tight ends on the roster. The 2 oldest guys of those scholarship tight ends are Malcolm Epps and Carter Johnson, both transfers. Johnson, a former defensive tackle who transferred up last year from, he was at TCU, went to a junior college, and then came to Pitt. Epps transferred in as a super senior, 6th-year senior this year from USC. Gavin Bartholomew is a junior, and then Cole Mitchell and Jake Renda as redshirt sophomores who really haven't played much at all. And then that's it. There's no scholarship freshman, no scholarship redshirt freshman. I was looking, they brought in, I think, 5 tight ends for official visits in the last 2 classes, 23 and 22 classes. 5. Didn't get any of them. Didn't sign any of them. And it shows. I mean, it shows in the recruiting. It doesn't make any sense that they only brought in 3 tight ends for official visits last year. It doesn't make any sense that they only brought in 2 the year before. I know that they know they need to use tight ends. I know that they know tight ends are a valuable position and you should put those guys on the field, but holy cow, has this been a problem basically since Pat Narduzzi arrived. And it's not like they were recruiting tight ends great before Narduzzi, but in 2013 they signed Scott Orndorff. In 2012 they signed J.P. Holtz. So they at least had a couple good years there, and those guys played really well for Pitt for a long time. Since then, it's been a mess and an unproductive mess, despite their best efforts. Even in a year like 2017 when they signed 3 guys, they're all gone in like a year. Well, not entirely a year. Grant Kerrigan stuck around for a few years and played offensive line most of those last few years. So I don't know what the solution is. I think they probably have to keep going and getting transfers. They've done a lot of that over the years. Matt Flanagan and Nakia Griffin-Stewart and Daniel Morega, Carter Johnson, Malcolm Epps, Lucas Krull. I mean, they've gotten a lot of tight end transfers. Some of them have actually even been decent. They're probably just going to have to keep scratching those lottery tickets and trying to get a tight end out of the transfer portal because the high school recruiting is just not living up to it. There's not a lot happening there and hasn't been a lot happening there. They've got 1 commitment for 2024. Eric Ingwerson, a kid from Nebraska, who after he committed to Pitt got an offer from Nebraska, and you'd like to think everybody's going to turn, once they commit, they're 100,000% committed and they're going to turn everyone down, but a Nebraska kid getting an offer from Nebraska is going to be something to watch. So who knows if that commitment is even solid at this point. I don't know. It's a tricky spot, and I don't know what the solution is. All right, and then the offensive line. I think I'm realizing that we're going pretty long on this, so we're going to break this up into offense and defense. I didn't intend to do that, but I also didn't intend to go quite as long as we have. So let's talk about the offensive line, and then we'll do the defense tomorrow. Offensive line, Pitt is currently projected to have 16 scholarship offensive linemen on the 2023 roster. And I actually really like how it's sort of come together over the last few years. It wasn't like this. They didn't have quite the spread of guys that they've got this year. So in those 16, they've got 5 as redshirt or super seniors, 1 redshirt junior, Branson Taylor, 4 guys as redshirt sophomores, and then 6 freshmen or redshirt freshmen. And I think that's a great distribution. It really is, because they actually have managed to become, at offense, on the offensive line, both top-heavy and kind of backloaded with underclassmen. Where you have 5 seniors and then 10 freshman or sophomore eligible guys. That's a great spread of across the classes. It really is. And even though you're going to run into a situation next year where maybe you're relying on some inexperienced players, it's good to have that kind of spread across the classes, because that gives you depth, that allows you, ideally prevents you from running into any big holes or gaps that, oh no, you got to get you have to get 2 transfers on the offensive line just to fill out your starting lineup. Pitt hasn't been in that position. They're not going to be in that position this year, and they should be pretty good for a while. Now, of course, there are some transfers in the mix there. Ryan Jacoby is a transfer who's likely to start this year, but he transferred a couple years ago. Jackson Brown transferred in this offseason from Cal as a redshirt freshman with 4 years of play, including this one. He will, and so there have been some transfers, but on the whole, this is largely a recruited group. This is a group that they've put together, and I think there's a lot of promise in these offensive linemen, even the young guys that we haven't seen much. I think Terrence Enos and Terrence Moore look like good players. Dorian Ford is really intriguing as a former defensive tackle from Baldwin who came to Pitt and switched to the offensive line. Hey, there's a precedent there. And then those redshirt freshmen, particularly Ryan Bear and Jackson Brown, there's an expectation that they're going to be the bookend tackles for a couple of years. You move into next season, presumably Mac Gonsalves doesn't come back. Branson Taylor could slide inside to guard, and you could have Bear and Brown as bookends for like 2 or 3 years in a row, which would be huge if you could develop that kind of continuity with 2 really talented players. And then BJ Williams, who enrolled in January, earned a lot of positive pub this spring, and the coaches liked him enough to make him the second-team center, and gave Terrence Moore, who had been working at backup center, gave him some reps on the outside just because they liked Williams that much. So I think there's some encouraging signs among the young offensive linemen. You've got numbers, and I think you've got some good players. So the offensive line situation, I'm somewhat bullish on it going forward, because I think it could be a pretty solid, reliable, stabilized group over the next few seasons at Pitt, which I don't think they've ended up with good offensive lines over the last few years, but I don't think we ever really went into a situation saying, boy, they're really set for the next 3 seasons or 4 seasons or 2 seasons or whatever. I don't think we ever really looked at a situation and felt all that confident about the long term of that situation. So that was it was sort of a positive. And I think when you see it laid out on the scholarship board today on Panther-Lair.com, you're going to, I think you'll get it. I think you'll probably see the same thing I did and probably have the same reaction, I would think. But all right, that's the offensive side. And I mean, we went, we're well past 20 minutes. And so I know you guys have attention spans that don't always extend. But listen, be back here tonight at 8:30 p.m. on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com for the Panther-Lair Show. Jim Hammett from Panther-Lair.com will be joining us again to talk about everything going on. We'll talk about Papa Conte. We'll talk about scholarship numbers. We'll talk about everything happening in the world of Pitt sports right here on the Panther-Lair Show. So tune in tonight, 8:30 p.m. If you want to make sure you don't miss it, if you're worried you're going to forget or whatever, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then you have the option to turn on notifications. You turn those on, you're going to get an alert sent to your phone when we go live every day, or every night when we go live, or when we post a new video. So, I mean, it helps you not have to remember what's going on. So do that. Like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and then head over to Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com for the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. Thanks for tuning in today. We appreciate it. Hope your week has been good so far. We're at the midpoint, so enjoy your Wednesday, and we'll be back tonight with the live show, and then tomorrow morning for the Morning Pitt right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.